He would say, and your name is Madhudvisa. And when he said Madhudvisa, have you ever heard Prabhupada say your name, you never forget it. The way he says it, because it becomes genuine when he says it, Madhudvisa. And everybody says, wow, Madhudvisa, what does that mean? Who is that? What is that? And what did he say? And you forget your name right away, although you heard him clearly say it, you forget it. So later on you have Upendra or one of the servants ask Prabhupada, what does his name mean? And this and that. So I asked Prabhupada, what the name means, and he broke it down. Dvisha means to be envious, D-V-I-S-A, Dvisha, to be envious. And Madhu, as you know, is the great demon. So Madhudvisha means one who is envious of Madhu. And I said, Prabhupada, how can Krishna be envious of anyone? And Prabhupada said, no, Krishna can be envious too. Madhu was such a great demon that he became envious of him and cut his head off, annihilated the Madhu demon. So anything's possible, with Krishna, any emotion. It's in its perfect form.
One morning on Juhu Beach, we were walking, and the birds were flying in the sky. They're flying in a very perfect formation, and they would turn around, all of them together, or one bird going and all other birds flying, one straight line or U-turn, So I asked Prabhupada, how do these birds manage, flying in a perfect formation? How do they communicate with each other? Who's there? And Prabhupada's response was, they are not less intelligent like you are.
The first time Prabhupada gave me a personal assignment was when I was in Los Angeles, and we had just moved into the La Cienega Temple, which was the first church in the history of ISKCON. We had always operated out of storefronts in New York City, and Los Angeles at Pico Boulevard, and San Francisco at Frederick Street. And everybody, it was like storefront. That was the modus operandi of the devotees in those days. Go rent a storefront, and open a temple. So everybody kind of did that. But in La Cienega Boulevard, we had actually rented a church. It was a big, fairly good-sized church. So we were all there, and we were going on Sankirtan. Everything was going on very well. And I was the treasurer, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj was the president. And there was a lot of older devotees there. So we were kind of at loggerheads with each other, myself and Tamal. We were always serving together, but somehow or other we were pulling in different directions at some times. So Srila Prabhupada called me in and called Tamal in together. And so he said, well, why is there a problem? And Tamal said, well, Madhavisa can do the same things I do. And, we both can do them, but sometimes he wants to do them and sometimes I want to do them, and we get into conflict like this. So Srila Prabhupada said, well, let Madhavisa go to San Francisco and be the temple president there. So I said, great, this is a breath of fresh air. I'm going to go and become the temple president in San Francisco, the temple that I originally joined at. And that was a special responsibility because that's where our Rath Yatra festival was held. In those days, there was no other Rath Yatra festivals on a grand style. There was maybe some small festivals, but there wasn't even any Rath Yatra festival in Los Angeles in those days. But in San Francisco, that was the new Jagannath Puri, and we had a tradition of a grand Rath Yatra. So when I was sent to San Francisco, that was the first, personal instruction that I was receiving from Srila Prabhupada. I had been serving Prabhupada, but it was always as the group. It wasn't, Prabhupada saying, go there and take responsibility. And he said, make this Rath Yatra even grander, make it like it is in Jagannath Puri in India. So I went there to San Francisco with that feeling of responsibility.
I got to go to New York, where I got initiation. And of course I was with Kirtanananda, who was very, sannyasi. He had a lot of pull. Then I would get to sit right by Srila Prabhupada on his Vyasasana on Henry Street, which was packed. And I don't know if you would have ever been on 439 Henry Street. It was not a very big temple room, and New York was very crowded, and everyone was from all the visiting Columbus Temple, Pittsburgh Temple, New Vrindavan. Devotees from everywhere would come to New York to see Srila Prabhupada. And I got the benefit to go on morning walks because I was with Kirtanananda. I was his servant. And so we'd go on the morning walk. So I was getting some personal association in that way. And I remember one day, this was my first close contact to him, was in the temple room. And what had happened was devotees were just crunched standing there at kirtan, as Prabhupada was having kirtan before class. And then we would all bow down to pay our obeisances, which of course would take up a lot more room when we knelt down. So when I got up, there was a devotee behind me whose head was right at my feet. So I got up, and he got up at the same time and pushed me forward, which I was right beside Srila Prabhupada's Vyasasana, and I just fell like right across his Vyasasana, kind of on him a little bit, and I literally fell onto him. And he just looked over and he said, "So what is the difficulty?" And I just, like a mouse, I said, "Nothing, Srila Prabhupada," and I just cowered back into my space there. And then that was stopped from there. But that was my first meeting with Srila Prabhupada, where I made my presence known.
Oh, there was a wonderful story about Prabhupada when we got to the land in Juhu Beach. That there was a family there that was airline pilots, and Prabhupada was going to be staying in their house. And their family name was Acharya. And we were just situating ourselves next door, and Prabhupada, when he was on a morning walk or traveled, he always had this flying wedge of disciples behind him. And he'd be leading, and they would all be sort of swept along in his wake. And we came up to the Acharyas, and they were standing at the top of the stairs. It was a tiny little house, but somehow it seemed very large at the time, and they were all standing at the top of the stairway, beaming and smiling and welcoming Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was coming along, and all of us were there, knowing it was a small house. We were all planning to be the number one to crowd inside and sit down when Prabhupada was there, because he always said some wonderful things as soon as he came into someone's home and sat down. And we all wanted to be witnesses to those wonderful things. So he came up the stairs with his cane and turned in front of the Acharyas. They were standing there, the whole family. He turned and looked grandly over his disciple and said, "Ah," he said, "now I am finally taking shelter of the Acharyas."
Srila Prabhupada was tremendously pleased with the Rath Yatra festival. And he said this is the process of keeping the devotees, all of the devotees, enlivened. Because now Krishna consciousness was kind of spread out a little bit, it was getting far-reaching. There was temples like opening in Seattle, in Vancouver, and places that were kind of spreading the devotees out. So these festivals served as reunions, during the year. So this Rath Yatra in 1969, devotees were coming from all over, the country, actually. Brahmananda and some devotees came from New York, and there was devotees from Vancouver and Portland. There was a temple then, Los Angeles. So that was like a reunion, and all the devotees would come together, and Srila Prabhupada would come there, and it was a tremendous thing, to have all the devotees serving Srila Prabhupada. Everything was new and everything was special for that engagement. Even down to the buttons on Srila Prabhupada's kurta. I remember one devotee was in charge, and he was stressing that we have to have pearl buttons for Prabhupada's kurta. I'm saying, "Prabhupada, why just regular buttons? We can't afford it." And he said, "No, we have to have pearl buttons." And so we went and bought the pearl buttons. And it was like, that's how much it was. Everything had to be new, fresh, and perfect. And even though we were still operating out of just a little storefront, it was all painted, everything was clean, everything was spick and span for the festival. And Srila Prabhupada came, to that little storefront for the festival day. And I remember there were so many devotees that, the devotees couldn't get in the front door. Most of the devotees were standing out on the sidewalk.